Hey, everybody, and welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Erin Knopf, and today I am joined by Dr. Sam DeCaro. So excited to have you here because I've been a fan from a distance for a while, but this is actually our first time getting to communicate and hang out together.
I know. I can't believe we haven't actually met. And so I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for talking about such an important topic. I was really excited to come on and dig
Of
in.
course. Okay, so for those of you that don't know Dr. Sam DeCaro, she is the Director of Clinical Outreach and Education at Renfrew Center, and I'd love for you to share more about your roles, responsibilities, experience, and your podcast, please.
Of course. Yeah. So I've been with the Renfrew Center for 13 years now. I actually started as a therapist at our residential program in Philadelphia. And was also team leader there. I was assistant clinical director, but now I'm in this new role, director of clinical outreach and education. So a big part of what I do a lot of presentations for other eating disorder providers. So I do continuing education presentations. I also do webinars for alums. I write blogs, and I'm also the co-host of the Renfrew podcast, All Bodies, All Foods. We have lots of great episodes where we have experts on the show, but also we have people with lived experience come on and talk about their stories of what recovery is like and, what life is like on the other side of. Yeah. So it's been such an honor to be able to co-host that podcast. And, I'm just so happy to do it.
Oh, sounds amazing. And I think it's so important too to get the word out there that recovery is possible. Hearing from people with lived experience on the other side of this journey
Yeah.
is not only inspiring to other potential patients, but also to the providers doing the work. I mean, that is so necessary. We have to remember the why. We have to remember why we wake up every day, why we have the bleeding hearts we do, because
Yeah.
people do get better. I keep telling patients all the time, I'm not doing this for shits and giggles. I'm doing this because you can get better. You deserve to get better, and let's make it happen.
Yes, that reminds me. I run a group at the residential program at Spring Lane in Philadelphia where I will invite alums in recovery to come and tell their recovery story to the residents who are there. And
Awesome.
it's so important. I'm kind of biased. I think it's one of the best groups at Spring Lane because it's a chance for the residents to hear that it gets easier, that recovery is possible, and also a chance to ask questions. How do you stay on track in recovery? How do you navigate urges and triggers and all of that stuff? But I truly believe it's so crucial to carve out space for people to tell their recovery stories, whether it's in a group or on a podcast episode or in a newsletter. We have to hear these stories as
Have to.
reminders that, eating disorders, I mean, it's possible to get better. I would not do this work if it wasn't.
No, it'd be
Yeah.
really hard
Yeah.
for everybody involved. But that actually, if anything, is a great segue because so much of work we do with patients and clients in their recovery journey is actually preparing them for being in the real world again. And we know the real world is drenched, saturated in diet culture, in beauty culture, in all of these, do you have this trait? You don't? Well, here's how to change to have the trait. And if anything, learning diet culture is something not only patients and clients benefit from, but truly their supporters, family members, their friends, everybody, the guy on the street can unlearn diet culture too.
Yeah.
Truly,
Yeah.
not to be
Yeah.
hyperbolic. Tell me more about your number one foray into unlearning diet culture. What is this obsession with health, for example? Like, why do we have this obsession and why do we seem to have such a hard time grasping?
Yeah, good question. I think it's natural to where we want to blame ourselves. It's like, why do I have this obsession? Why do I even want this? Why am I so focused on this? And I often say, we sort of have to follow the money trail. We're obsessed with it because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation selling us this idea that if we change the shape and size of our body. And by the way, it's our responsibility to do that. That's the message that we get, that it's like a moral imperative, that if we do that, then we'll not only be healthy, but we'll find love and people will respect us and people will like you and you'll have everything that you want. it really a lot of times it just comes down to money. These industries, it's not just the diet industry. It can be the fitness industry. It can be the wellness industry. And unlearning diet culture is a lifelong process. I just want to validate how hard it is because it's always changing. And it's so sneaky and it's so tricky. And there's always a new product on the market. And it's always packaged in a way where you think, this sounds different. This sounds like the answer. Just a few years go by and then you realize it's just another trick up their sleeve. I think one of the most important things is to be able to very clearly define what health means for you, because it's going to be defined in a very problematic way when you have industries that are selling you something. Health, unfortunately, I think we're taught that health is really about how you look and how you feel. We hear that a lot, but I think it's tricky because I think a lot of times people say, but I did feel better when I was a certain size, right? And I want to validate that because we live in a world where you are treated better when you look a certain way. And there are privileges that come along with being within the ideal range, of what society tells us we should be. That's very real. And a lot of people do feel better when they're smaller because unfortunately we just live amidst all this weight stigma and weight discrimination. And the thin ideal and thin privilege it's a real thing. And I just want to validate that health is sort of marketed as this thing of, you have to look a certain way to be healthy. And we have to ask ourselves a very important question. What actually does health mean? Because there's some very unhealthy ways you can get to that ideal body. Some very damaging ways. And you can look healthy by society standards. You can lose weight also, but in very harmful ways.
Yeah,
And
internally,
so,
you ain't healthy. Your liver is
yeah,
unhealthy. Your heart is
your
unhappy. Your
heart,
kidneys are unhappy.
exactly.
Your
Your
bone
brain,
marrow.
right?
Oh,
Your
brain.
brain.
Duh.
Yeah. Yeah. I often remind folks, in my role as a therapist, but also on the podcast, we talk a lot about the misconception that you can only be malnourished if you're quote unquote underweight, and that you can actually be malnourished at any weight. Malnourishment affects the brain and affects so many things in the brain: mood, sleep, stress, the list goes on. I mean, you're a psychiatrist. You know how the micronutrients and things that are missing affect the way our brain is firing, and it affects focus and concentration and memory. My point being, you can look a certain way and still be very unhealthy because weight is just a very unreliable measure of health.
There are multiple domains of health. It's not
Right.
just the physical.
Correct.
Our experience of human life through the lens of health can actually be looked at from an environmental perspective, social, relational. There's just so many other levels beyond physical. But I love too that you mentioned when we were preparing for this how ableism really is often brought into the conversation of health as well. And I know that's a whole other
It
conversation we
is.
can
Yeah.
have, but it's important to name just because people have different abilities and capacities is not enough to conclude healthy or not.
Right, exactly. And I think a big part of unlearning diet culture is being able to understand and accept that there are very real differences between all of us physically and mentally. That
Yes.
diversity is just sort of like a natural part of the human experience, whether it's body diversity or neurodiversity, and that we're not all meant to sort of fit into this mold where society says like this is sort of the ideal way to look and to be and to feel.
Or even a
And
bell curve. I mean, I find it
right,
really interesting how these mathematical, graphical concepts get applied to the human experience so readily. We want this
right,
standardization. We want a mean or an average. We want to know what more people are dealing with and what minority groups are dealing with. And why? To what
right.
end?
Everyone is so different, which is why,
Yeah.
treatment needs to be so individualized. We need to see ourselves as individuals, and we have our own sets of challenges and strengths. And health is going to have a different definition depending on who you are and what you want. It's not a moral obligation to even pursue health if that's just not something that is a priority for you. And that's okay. And I think that pressure is always on, that it's like, it is your duty as a human to achieve optimal health. And it's like, why is that?
But I think that also is coming from the singular definition that health is physical, health is diet and exercise. And when you do only look through that, yeah, it's really hard to apply that to all people. But others could be pursuing health in a different way. How
Right.
close are, and reliable are their relationships? How successful are they in their purpose in life with their career or in commitment to their
Right.
family? That is also something they could be valuing that I would say is health
That is
wrapped
health.
into it.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
forget about emotional health, social health, spiritual health. All of these things matter when it comes to our wellness, but we don't hear about these things. We don't prioritize these things. I think it's just harder to sell us something when we're talking about these other layers of what it means to be healthy. But also, I think there are, as you were saying, there are these environmental factors, these sort of macro factors that we never hear about either. It's sort of like the onus is always on the individual, when really there are so many issues with the systems at play that impact our health. It's really infinite when we think about it, but do we have clean air to breathe? Do we have clean water to drink? Do we live in a neighborhood that's safe? Do we have access to food? Do we have the time to get food and prepare food and cook food? Do we have the education we need to navigate the health system? I mean, the list goes on, and
It really
all of
does.
these factors, we call these social determinants of health, are often ignored or just completely minimized. And it's like, no, it's really about what you eat and how much you move your body. And
Yeah.
actually, there are so many systems that impact our wellness that we don't have much control over. We don't talk about genetics enough. I mean, genetics play a huge role in what we look like and our health status, and the list goes on. Again, it's sort of when we are made to feel like there's something that we could do differently, that it's our responsibility to do something differently, we're more vulnerable to buying something. We're more vulnerable to falling into this system where we're spending our money and trying to achieve something that is, quite frankly, often not achievable and not sustainable, which is that body ideal that's pushed on us. So yeah, I try to bring up social determinants of health as much as possible because awareness is crucial. Christy Harrison wrote a great book called The Wellness Trap. She does a wonderful job talking about the social determinants of health and really shining a light on them, because these are the things that maybe we need to focus our energy into advocating for change rather than trying to chase a weight loss drug or the next fad diet that repeatedly shows us over and over that they don't work, but there's a lot of money to be made.
They make your health worse. It's the weight cycling, by the way, that is likely contributing to all of the fear mongering around being a larger body, getting
Yep.
you type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease and hypertension, blah, blah, blah. It's more the weight cycling and
Weight
how you keep
cycling.
injuring your body over and over and over again. I
Yeah.
think you bring up a good point of there's an internal motivation and an external exploitation that is being taken advantage of here. Now that we're raising awareness of check in with yourself, what are you feeling insecure about and that someone else could take advantage of? What's a way to recognize perhaps when the information is toxic, is likely to be predatorial versus truly holistically supportive?
Yeah, great question. Number one, are they selling something? That's usually,
Do
I
they
mean,
make money off of your
yeah,
choice?
important question to ask immediately. Not to say that everything for sale is harmful. I'm not saying that, but important question to ask yourself. Are they selling something? Are they sponsored by someone? What's going on? Is there money to be made here? First question to ask. But also, I think there are certain messages at this point. I mean, I've done this work long enough that there's certain things that just jump right out at me that are so obviously diet culture that aren't as obvious maybe to other people who aren't in the eating disorder field. I often joke with patients and alums about the fact that if you've worked in this field or you've been through treatment, it's like you see the world with a different set of eyes. Like there's just like, you can't
Yeah.
unsee it. Once you see it and you realize all of the conversations, all the things on TV, on social media, and you realize it's everywhere, but you
Everywhere.
didn't see it before. You didn't notice it before. But once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. It's just there. Now my partner, I've trained him to see things too, where he can
Totally.
point things out. He's like, oh, that's so toxic. I'm like, I know. I taught you well. But yeah, there's certain things that jump out to me. Any message that the body can change quickly and easily, that weight is flexible and easily changed, ignores the very real biology and genetics that really already set the stage for what we're probably going to look like throughout our lives. And body diversity is a real biological thing, and we're all meant to look differently. We're not all meant to look the same. And I think we're tricked into believing that there's sort of like a very narrow range of what we're supposed to look like. Any kind of like all or nothing messages, like if you cut out all of this, or if you only take this supplement, or you only do this diet, that all or nothing sort of thinking in therapy, all or nothing thinking is considered distorted. We work on flexibility, that there's other ways to sort of think about things. And when we see that all or nothing messaging in the media, that's also a red flag. What else? Oh gosh, there are so many.
I mean, I think playing on your primal fears too, anything that makes you feel like I'm in trouble or I will die tomorrow. Like, honestly, there are some messages out there that
Yeah,
are subtly saying that. If there's an urgency you suddenly feel,
right.
that's also, I think, another red flag of just take a pause, take a check in. What was being said? What am I worried about now? And
Right, right.
do I actually need to be worried?
Right. Anything that sort of provokes those intense emotional experiences
Yeah.
that drive you to want to do something immediately, to buy that product or to jump on it, that's probably a big red flag. I think media is designed to make us feel very strong emotions. So to be aware of that, to check in with yourself. What am I feeling right now? What's the urge that I'm feeling? Am I feeling less than? Or am I seeing something that's just making me feel like I'm not good enough? I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of respect, because we already know that no matter what you look like, you are worthy of love and respect. You don't have to look a certain way to be worthy of those things. It's sort of like your human right to be worthy of love and
Yeah.
respect. And if there's ever a moment where you're checking in with yourself and you sort of feel like not going to be worthy or lovable until I fill in the blank, that's probably a red flag. And that's
Biggest red
another
flag.
thing. Yeah, that's another thing we teach in eating disorder treatment, is we say it over and over again. You're worthy of love and respect from others, and you're worthy of that for yourself. To love and respect your body regardless of what it looks like, to be able to appreciate and respect and care for your body, even if maybe you don't like the way it looks, or you don't love it. What we try to teach is that you can still respect and care for your body, even if society is telling you that you're not good enough.
Well, if anything, that internalized message just proves the point of how discrimination and oppression exists within systems, right?
Right.
If we were to flip the switch of, well, I'm going to discriminate you unless, versus like, I will feel love and respect when,
Mm,
you
hmm.
realize even more, sorry, discrimination, that's a heavy word. Please don't come at me so aggressively, right? But that really does make it more obvious of how inappropriate that entire structure is, really.
Right. Right. That's a good point. And that reminds me also, when we talk about social determinants of health, I don't know if I even explicitly stated that discrimination, oppression impact health. That's another thing that, yeah, right. And, weight stigma, weight discrimination, not the least of which is, research shows us that when people actively experience weight stigma and weight discrimination, they're less likely to use medical services. And that impacts health, And
Because,
so,
well, I think it's important to name that's because the medical service is propagating
exactly.
weight stigma. Like,
Right.
that's because it happens there. It'd be
That's
one thing
exactly
if it
right.
happened in a
Yes.
vacuum and it'd be a weird come to have people not go to the doctor. But no, it's because they feel really bad about themselves when they leave their doctor's office. But
Exactly.
that is also another talk altogether.
That is another
But
talk.
I actually realized, like, I love now, actually, even though we came in here wanting to talk about unlearning diet culture, we want everyone out there listening to understand that is the tip of the iceberg. The insidious nature of what is going on for all humans living in at least our US culture is much deeper than that. We are ultimately trying to uproot the discrimination and the oppression that comes from these cultural stigmas. And the first step that everyone has access to is becoming aware and then having intentions with your actions. So, to come back to unlearning diet culture, one of the biggest ways we are influenced nowadays, there's even a whole group of humans now called influencers, is social
Social
media.
media.
So, can you say more about how you see diet culture taking advantage of that platform or platforms to reach people?
Absolutely. Diet culture has found its way into social media so easily. You know, you have these influencers who have all these followers and they have influence over them. They have these sponsorships, you know, they have links in their bio where they make commission and all of that. And you're going to see all of that on social media. It's very important to be aware when you're on social media, the content that your algorithm is feeding you, because you can teach your algorithm to show you different things. It's interesting. I did a whole presentation on social media literacy before. And one of the tips that I really love, I actually learned this from another clinician who raised their hand and said, you know, I had a patient who did this and it really helped. So it was a patient who had a social media feed that was just entrenched in diet culture. And they weren't really ready to change anything about their account. They didn't want to mess with it. Fair enough. So the therapist suggested, well, how do you feel about just creating a second account? Yeah. And just putting in some effort to follow actual registered dietitians, real therapists, people in recovery, body positive, fat positive influencers, like just putting in effort to do that as an experiment. And so this person did that and was able to like compare their experience on both accounts. And I was really shocked to learn that they ended up deleting their first account because they
Yeah.
just had such a better time on the other side of things. They didn't know that they could actually feel better and empowered and confident on a different side, sort of have more of like a growth mindset on the other side, feeling just better in general. So I share that
Which is
tip.
good for health, by the way. Oh my gosh, you feel
Yeah.
better. You're a little more
Yeah.
joyful. You have more energy. You don't feel like you just want to get in the fetal position. Guess what? That's health,
Right.
everybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I think it's important to be mindful and to check in with yourself. How do you feel when you're on social media? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel less than? Do you feel like you need to change? Do you feel ashamed? What are the emotions that come up? Can you name them? Can you actually say them out loud? Like, wow, I feel really ashamed right now. I feel really anxious. I feel really guilty. And to be able to be mindful of what you're actually doing on social media. There's a lot
So
of
what brought you
research
there to
out
begin
there.
with?
Yeah. There's a lot of research around social media, and it's worth looking at the way you're using social media more than anything. Are you using social media to self-objectify? Are you posting pictures because you just really want people to like them and you're wanting something from your followers in the comments? Are you using it to compare yourself? Really think about what are the motivations of using social media. Am I using it to compare rather to connect? Research suggests that there are certain people who are going to be extra vulnerable to some of the harmful effects of social media. People who are already depressed, people who already have body image concerns and weight concerns, people who are already struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder is automatically going to make you probably a little more vulnerable to the impacts of social media. It's just important to acknowledge that maybe it would be beneficial to take a break from social media, create some boundaries around it. There's research that talks about even taking a 1 week break from social media can have significant improvements on your mental well-being. 1
I can
week.
attest to that. I can attest to
Yeah.
that.
Have you
Um,
tried?
I have,
Yeah.
and it was amazing how much quieter my brain
Mm.
was. I actually
Hmm.
do have ADHD, but it was crazy, crazy noticing that the fervor, the frenetic energy just slowed. And did I miss out on knowing some things? Yeah. Did I have a little FOMO? Yeah. But
Yeah.
ooh, the energy saving was
Mm,
beautiful. And so I actually now keep a screen limit time on my social media accounts every single day where I
uh,
don't consume more than an hour in a day. And that has helped me sustain. So I can
yes.
attest I am a
There
human
we
being
go.
like
You're
everyone
living
else, y'all.
proof. You're living
Living proof
proof.
here.
I'm so glad you brought up FOMO, fear of missing out, because I actually had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Charlotte Markey on our podcast. She wrote multiple books on body image, but she does research on social media. And she found actually that the FOMO in her research is present in the beginning, but the longer you stay off social media, the FOMO goes away.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I get that. That makes sense. That
Yeah,
checks.
a lot of people I hear, I hear from people in recovery, one of the biggest fears of getting off social media is fear of missing out. And just want to reassure anyone out there that FOMO research says if you just give it enough time, it'll lessen. So it's not
Well,
going to
isn't
feel that
that
way the whole time.
true psychologically for really anything? We notice urge surfing, for example. It's always worse at the beginning, but if you can just
Yeah,
hang on, it'll get better, right? I feel
exactly.
like this is just the human reward pathway getting exploited in
Yeah,
our
totally.
day to days.
So
We're not
true.
going to, make everything a problem on today's Doc Talk, I promise. But just, raising awareness, find the space to look at something with curiosity and see if it really is of benefit to you or not. I think
Yes.
I have only one other tip that I like to remind people of. When you're trying to unlearn diet culture, notice how it does infiltrate your personal relationships, how it does show up in conversations. I know some friends eye roll me, some don't, some are making changes, but I am that person when I'm at any family or social gathering and someone makes a comment about someone's body, even in a flattering,
Mm,
complimentary way. I'm like, do we have to talk about bodies? I mean,
right.
it could be
Right.
anything else. Like you are just radiant. You are just glowing with energy. I'm so happy to see you. I've missed your smile versus, girl, you look so good. Like, did you lose weight? Don't ask.
Yeah.
Do not
Yeah.
ask anybody about their weight. Do not make comments about body sizes and changes. That has somehow been indoctrinated into us
It
for
has.
generations as far as
Mm.
like polite conversation.
I
But
know. I know. And you think about also
it's so personal.
it is. And I think also with children, I think instinctively people often say, oh, you're so cute. Like it goes right to appearance from the start,
And I'm guilty of this too,
I
even
am
as a
too.
pediatrician and child
Yeah. Yeah.
psychiatrist with two girls, trying to raise them in a body positive way. Oh, I catch
Sure.
myself all the time.
Yeah, just to validate for everyone out there, like this is hard stuff. It's ongoing. Even as a professional who's been in the eating disorder field for 13 years, still, I still have to work
Yeah.
on my awareness and work on all of this stuff. It's a lifelong process.
Because it was modeled. It's over and
Yes,
over. It literally
absolutely.
lives in these paradigm constructs in our brains.
Yeah.
And that's why you're here with me talking about this so we can commit with others. Let's change the model. It isn't that hard. It's not that scary.
Yeah.
Truly. It's hard in that it takes time, but the effort itself, I don't know if it's actually too strenuous.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you brought up just, everyday conversations and how helpful it can be just to sort of have like a script ahead of time of what you might say if someone comments on your food or your body or someone else's body. Just to practice, saying those things, sort of like pre-made like sound bites that you can say
Yeah.
or just getting practice like changing the subject or making a joke or just kind of knowing ahead of time what you're going to do that can be really helpful, I think.
Yes, very helpful. It doesn't have to be confrontational
Not at
or
all.
argumentative. It can be
Hmm.
very casual. Although
Yeah,
sometimes I do just give a side eye, like, "Mm-mm,
like really, like are we
really?
are we really going to do this? Yeah.
Wrap it up, wrap
I
it
know.
up."
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it has been so wonderful having you on Doc Talk. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having
Oh
me.
my gosh, and all the work you're already doing beyond unlearning diet culture. So this has been Doc Talk with Dr. Sam DeCaro and Dr. Anash. We'll see you next time.